Mandisa Haarhoff, and I come from South Africa. I basically was born in Port Elizabeth, went to university where I studied drama in Pietermaritzburg in KwaZulu-Natal. And I kind of got into drama by doing a BA social science, and I was required to do a language, of which I was like, who studies English, right? And drama could be a language, and so I got into theater that way. And also because I'm extremely shy, I was very shy, so I thought drama would be a good way to get me to be comfortable and things like that. So I got into theater like that, but I first fell in love with dancing and writing, because I've always written and I've always enjoyed writing. And so in starting to write and in dancing and all those things, I decided one day I'd like to write my own stuff, and I never thought of performing my own things. So I was asked to perform a play and to find a one-woman show that I could perform for my master's project. And I said, well, instead of performing someone else's work, why not write my own? And so that's how Crush Up Wakanda came about.
Yeah, so what's your inspiration? What's the inspiration for this piece that you're going to perform tonight?
Okay, well, the particular piece itself, two things inspired it. The first being having to explain my surname to people a lot. I have an Afrikaans surname and I'm black, and so people are like, Mandisa Haarhoff, what do you mean Haarhoff? It becomes this big question that people start asking. And so I thought, well, it is a big question. It's a big question for a lot of people in the country. It's a big question for me. Being able to identify myself as Mandisa, being black on the one hand and Haarhoff, Afrikaans on the other, and it was a very interesting, so I thought I should write a play about that. The second part was my understanding. As you grow up, you start seeing certain things about you, certain traits about you, and one of those is that I am an extreme crush hopper. Like, I love boys. No, that came out wrong. I like boys, you know, and I think they're cute and they're handsome, and I crush on them, and I'm like, oh, I like this one today, oh, tomorrow it's another one, and oh, they're all just handsome. And but there was something that was happening in those crushes. I was liking particular people at certain times in my life. When I was growing up, I only liked white boys. As I moved away, like, so the kind of crushes started being all about my racial association to things. And so I thought, why not pair that with the whole question of my identity? And perhaps there's something there, and there was. So those were the two inspirations, trying to position myself as a black person with a colored heritage, or as it were, mixed race heritage, which then leads to a white heritage as well. So that was very much.
So that's what inspired you. Yeah. But is there much intermarriage in South Africa?
Well,
between races?
Not too much, but there is. It's usually our rich black men, as we call them, our very rich and educated black men marry white women. And we have what we call, you've got white people, and then you have colored people, and then you have black people. The coloreds would be as a result of either Malay people who came into the country, or a mixed race between black and white, because colored is mixed race in South Africa. So there's a lot of that. We don't have a lot of interracial relationships, but there are. And it's a growing number every year. One of my friends, actually, she's black and she's married to a white man. So it's not shocking, you know. It's
not something out of ordinary,
no, not at all.
But it's not common as well.
It's not common, but it's also, we don't quite create a hoo-ha about it because it's bound to happen. We go to the same schools now, and it's really just one of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
It's interesting because at the same time, black people keep to blacks and white people keep to white. And I guess that happens in every other country.
That leads me to ask you about, what is it like in South Africa post-apartheid right now?
Well, During apartheid, obviously there were like actual officiated separations and segregation. Now, like I said, there's the whole trying to understand yourself as someone who comes from, we are first generation post-apartheid children. So you have to associate yourself with your family that grew up in that kind of segregation, and then you have to relate to your friends who are white or are colored or are Indian or are Asian or whatever it is. And it's having to understand who you are in relation to them and who you are in relation to your family, because you don't relate the same way. The segregations are still there because the demarcations, the spatial demarcations are still there. Economic segregation is still there. And so obviously not the privileged go to school with white kids, not everybody. So there's a few that get to interact a certain way with white people.
So would you say it's better for the younger generation compared to the older generation?
To an extent, the way the younger generation relates racially is very different how the older generation relates racially. But you also get a lot of resentment from the younger generation, especially the underprivileged younger generation, because a lot of black people are underprivileged. So there are tensions, you know, that one needs to deal with and that are apparent, and that that are even more so apparent now than perhaps they were long ago in apartheid, because in apartheid you weren't even allowed to admit to such tensions. So yeah.
So how would you say how would you describe being black in South Africa is different than other countries in the continent that didn't have the same history in terms of having apartheid? How would you compare the difference between race relations in South Africa and other African countries?
Well, I'm not quite familiar with other African countries, except for post-colonial literature.
Or being the identity of being black in
South Africa itself. So I would say the identity of being black in South Africa is it's a very complex thing. It's a really complex thing, to the extent that you have to deal with the fact that you are racially black in a country where you are the majority, yet are treated as a minority. And then simultaneously, you have to deal with the fact that it's post-apartheid, so there are certain kinds of legal preferences for you. And then you are now, even though you seem favored, you are in a position where you have to we were talking about this earlier, decide who you are for yourself without having to be defined by everything else. So it becomes problematic. It becomes problematic because you don't have to deal with the fact that you have to get past the race issue. You have to get past the economic issue. You have to get past the fact that you have privileges and people do not see who you are anymore, and they just see you as a black figure, you know, and we need diversity. So here's a black face that we can put in there. All those kinds of questions. But I think for a young black person in South Africa, it becomes, again, that thing of being culturally white, because the culture has changed so much, yet racially black. And it's being able to partner those two things and to relate to yourself in that way.
So what should we be expecting
tonight?
Yeah.
Have fun.
By the end of tonight's performance,
yes,
what would you want your audience to take away?
To walk away with three things. The first being that whiteness itself is a constructed marker of a certain that has been set apart as superior, and by that marker a lot of people begin to identify themselves as the other, or have been identified as other. So that's the one thing that I'm trying to show. Yet simultaneously, there are things in our relationship with whatever other race that is. So in this case, it's my relationship as a black person with the other that is white, or the superior that is white, that I can take away, that I inscribe as part of my identity. So some of us are hybrid. Some of us can't get away from and just be black or just be white. times have changed so much that what used to be white and what used to be separated as black there's this confluence that has taken place, and it's difficult to separate those two. And I guess what we then have to walk away with is, how do we recognize what is just and what is unjust? It is unjust to be racist. It is unjust to be prejudiced toward any person or any group, and yet at the same time, it is possible for me to speak English and not feel like I am denouncing my blackness. It is possible for me to straighten my hair, even though I really don't, and not feel like I'm denouncing my blackness. It is possible for me to wear my lovely beaded earrings and not feel like I'm trying to prove a black point. Those things are possible. It's possible to create these relationships, these confluential relationships, to be these hybrid identities. And we need to move away perhaps from a strict separation of things, because that is what causes prejudice.